correct? I believe, yeah. So should we wait for anybody else that anybody sees is missing, or should we go ahead and adjourn? I mean,
Adjourn.
Oh,
Wow, that was a quick one.
Quickest board meeting ever, Susie.
shall we call the meeting 4 o'clock, December 14th, Aspen School District? Eliza, can you call the roll?
Roll? Sure. Katie Frisch,
Here.
Susan Marolt,
Here.
Jonathan Nickel is absent, Dwayne Romero,
here.
Susie Zimmett,
Here.
all set, thank you.
Great. And shall we adopt the agenda? Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Great. And did we have anybody sign up for public
We
comment?
need to approve the agenda first, Susie.
Yep, we're gonna, let's do a quick roll call for that approval. Katie
Aye.
Frisch, Susan Marolt, Jonathan Nichols absent, Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie
Aye.
Zimmett. And to Susie, your question, we had not had anyone sign up for public comment as of about 3:45.
Okay. So shall we move on to the solar presentation with Jack Fox?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and just share my screen.
Thanks for being here, Jack.
Yeah, no worries. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Got
Awesome.
it.
Okay, so kind of the first thing I want to start talking about is specifically addressing schools in the Valley who currently utilize solar and have currently offset 100% of their energy needs with solar. We as a school district pride ourselves on being, a school on a hill. And essentially what that means is being ahead of the pack, environmentally speaking, socially speaking. And, at the moment, from an environmental standpoint, we're really lacking. We don't have any schools in the district who are currently offset by renewable energy, none that are really partially to any extent. But I think what's also interesting is the 3 schools in the Valley who have completely offset their energy usage by solar have done it in 3 completely different ways. And I think it's important to address the 3 ways, we possibly can. Because again, with prior administrations, they were very hesitant not to specifically outright own the solar panels. But given that we have a new administration, or at least a new superintendent, I think it's interesting. I think we should address all possible ways to implement solar. So Roaring Fork High School is totally offset by solar energy, and the way they've been able to do it is through a power purchase agreement, which is essentially where a provider will outrightly subsidize the entire project cost. But they, as a byproduct, so they'll sell you energy credits, and they're going to utilize, a specific space on, whatever plot of land you occupy, and they're going to build and subsidize the entire project cost. But as a byproduct, you don't outrightly own the solar panels. So typically how these deals work is most of them are structured. So over a 20-year period, you're still paying off whoever the provider you went with. And, so you're still paying for energy usage. And essentially as a byproduct, you don't outrightly own the solar panels. But you're still, the entire building would still be completely offset by renewables. Riverview School did what kind of the initial project proposal was, which is to have the school district subsidize the majority of the project costs, and then have the remaining funds be subsidized through core grants, as well as energy credits through, they did through XL Energy, but we do it, of course, through Holy Cross. And we've talked to them pretty extensively about giving us some good energy credit deals to lower the price of the project cost substantially. And then CRMS, same concept, power purchase agreement with SKICO, and then they are rightly on the solar panels after a 20-year period. But during that 20-year period, they're still paying off SKICO until they recoup their entire investment. So again, these are 3 ways we could easily implement, but I think it's just important to go through different options now that we have a new administration in, and I'm not quite sure what they would prefer doing. This is just a specific timeline of the project. It's really not important. It's just to kind of show how long we've been working on this for. So it's been about a 3-year process. It's really been on hold for the last 1.5 years, obviously, because we've had administrative changes and we didn't want to continue if we weren't entirely sure what what the administration wanted, and what they were comfortable with doing. But anyways, this is just to show kind of step by step how we've gotten to where we are at this point. So about a year and a half ago, Sunsense Solar, we got a grant to pay Sunsense Solar to make a project proposal for us. And essentially just outlines, this one specifically is energy production in the summer. And again, I'll email this to you, to you guys specifically, because I get that, the mean age in here is probably 40, so your eyes are a little shot. So I'm sure reading a lot of this is probably more difficult, but I'll send this to you guys individually, so you guys can get a better look at this. But essentially just outlining production. So, specifically in the summer, how much are we producing? How much do we need to produce? And then same with this one, this is specifically for winter. So what would be the efficiency of solar panels then? And then this was the rendering they did for us. So this is the Aspen Middle School fully equipped with solar panels. So this gives us to about 98% efficiency. So this solar setup as of right now would cover about 98% of the Aspen Middle School's energy needs. And we would probably have to find somewhere on campus to do the remaining 2%, but that wouldn't be that difficult to do. And then this is also including battery storage as well. So some of these orange elements are where we put some of the battery storage technology. This specifically is also available to the public. I'll send you guys this too. And this is just kind of outlining the Aspen Middle School's energy usage over the course of specifically the last year. So this is just kind of to give you guys an idea of, how much we spend on an annual basis, specifically on energy, as well as, at what periods of time do we have the, most significant demands for energy production and when do we not? So specifically on average, we spend about, 27,000 to 28,000 per year for the Aspen Middle School's energy needs. And then this one specifically is over the course of the last 3 years. And this kind of gives us an idea of, again, when is energy production most necessary? So generally speaking, solar panels are more efficient in the summer. But as a byproduct, the school's usage is less in the summers. Campus, or the extent to which you have kids on campus, is lessened significantly. So how you would build the system is it'd be a two-way system. So essentially in the winter, when you're not producing enough, you would take energy off of the grid. And then in the summer, when you're producing more than you need, Holy Cross would sell us energy credits to put our generated energy back onto the grid. And then Sunsense Solar did a good job of putting that into the equation of how many solar panels we would need in order to completely offset the cost. So after, a fiscal year, we're not still paying Holy Cross because, maybe we took more energy off the grid than we produced in the summer. But they did a pretty good job, implementing that into the decision-making of how much solar we need. So this is the total calculated savings, 27,000 to 28,000 per year. And then depending on, these are kind of arbitrary numbers for, how much specifically the district would give us financially to help make this project happen. But 350,000 is what other districts have given their solar projects, and the total project cost is about $500,000. So it's about a 13-year return on initial investment, presuming that the district through the bond gives us $350,000 and be about an 18-year payback period if the district subsidized the entire project costs. And then the total amount of saved CO2 emissions is quite large. That's also factoring in Holy Cross, about 44% of the energy they put onto the grid is renewable. That's even factoring that in. The remaining 56% of energy that's not renewable, that accounts for about 215,000 pounds of carbon dioxide being released that the Aspen Middle School building alone generates. And that's pretty significant because, the Aspen Middle School is a super efficient building, and that's a pretty large number, even considering that. These are kind of, what I consider the best two paths for project completion. So, generally, and again, this is depending on what Mr. Baugh would prefer doing, or at least, prior superintendents made a big, they had power purchase agreements that were offered, but they were pretty insistent about outright owning the solar panels from day one. So again, depending on what the administrative board would prefer doing, these are kind of the two paths for project completion I feel best serve the school specifically. So path one is, the school commits at least $350,000 from the capital improvements bond to help subsidize the project costs. And then the remaining funds would be raised through the Randy Udall Core Grant and then Holy Cross energy credits. The pros for that is it allows the district to own the solar panels on day one, recoup the initial investment quicker, and then start generating revenue for the district once that initial investment is recouped. Cons is it requires the district to subsidize a significant portion of the project costs. And alternatively, we've had a ton of companies offer us power purchase agreements, so it would not be difficult to find a company that would help us with that. But again, they would completely finance the project, and then generally over a 20-year period, we pay that down until we outrightly own the solar panels. So the pros for that is it's no upfront cost for the district. But alternatively, you're still paying a pretty significant fund. In fact, more than we currently pay on a monthly basis for energy, in order to pay off the developers who would help us finance the solar. And you're also not generating revenue for the project until at least 20 years, which is a pretty significant time span. And now just I really wanted to structure this such as it's more intended around, what are your guys' questions? What are your concerns? And then, I'll kind of leave my remaining time allocated for that.
Katie? You have a question? I have a, Jack?
Yeah.
So you said we and us, but I wasn't really sure who we and us was. Is it all you?
At this point, it is. When it was actually this idea came out of a project-based learning class. So it used to be a 5-man team, and now I'm doing most of it at this point.
And what grade are you?
I'm a junior in high school.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
I have some questions, Jack. First of all, that was awesome. SunSense is great. I can't actually read any of this stuff, as you said, but but I know that they are very detailed in their evaluations of this stuff. So my first question for you is, are you proposing a system that generates only and goes right into the grid, or are you proposing a system that does the complete battery or a partial battery based on the amount generated to hold the energy and actually use it during the year, during the time that you have it? Because there are two very different price points in terms of a system cost, right? Because batteries are super expensive.
Yeah. Sorry. So the current projection we had was including batteries. So the $500,000 project is including the battery technology we plan on putting on or equipping the system with. And then in terms of the type of system, so it's a two-way system. So again, in summer months when we're producing a lot more energy than we need, we'd be putting that energy onto the grid. And then in winter months when we're not producing nearly as much as we need, we'd be taking energy off the grid. But generally,
it all goes through the battery system.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, we kind of determined that, we were utilizing enough energy at night that it made sense to at least implement some storage technology to keep the building running at night.
Have you priced it out without the storage technology and the return on investment? If you don't store, you just sell?
We've not, because I think it's pretty important because we do enough activities at after dark that it makes sense to keep the building running during. I mean, we could always, you're right. I mean, we could always take energy off the grid at night. And I guess it's something definitely to look into. But I at least I think it's important to be totally self-sustaining at night, not have to directly pull from the grid. Because at that point, I'm not entirely. We'd have to recalculate, how much energy we're actually taking off the grid, and if that's equivalent to what we'd be putting on the grid in summer months.
Right. So I'd love to see that. Having looked at a bunch of these systems before, there obviously you don't get 100% of all the savings if you don't use a battery system, but you also aren't paying the maintenance on an ongoing basis of the batteries, because those, I believe, die after a certain amount of time. They need to be replaced every few years.
Yeah, they do.
So I'm not sure if that cost of the batteries, which are super expensive, unfortunately, is in your proposal or not. So I'd love to see that too, kind of seeing what the ongoing maintenance costs are, as well as the cost of, if you do a battery system, it will require, I believe, rewiring a lot of the school district buildings to feed from that battery system, opposed to the current draw on the power supply. So I'm not sure if that was included in the cost of the project or not too.
Yeah, so it's all centralized on the middle school building. So none of this power is being fed to either the elementary school building, the cottage, or the high school. So it's all specifically located at the middle school. But no, I mean that the implementation of batteries was included. And I'm not. I mean, I'd have to talk to the SunSense people again to ensure that the wiring costs and rewiring, at least the middle school building, is included. But presumably it was.
Okay. And then I have one final question, which is, does Holy Cross limit what you can sell them when you're coming from a school like this? Because I know they do on the residential side. Would they limit the amount of kilowatts we'd be allowed to sell them back in the summertime?
When we talked to them, they didn't specifically outline a limit. They said, whatever you put on, we will give you energy credits to put back on. Now, again, that's definitely something to ensure that's accurate, because the last time we talked to them was, again, probably a year and a half ago. But from what they specifically told us, it was, whatever you put on, we'd be happy to, we'll subsidize in energy credits and give you back. So, but again, that's something we definitely have to look into again, because and I guess that's an added cost. So, presumably, if the project gets approved, we would want to have SunSense take another look at the building. We'd want to meet up with Holy Cross again and just make sure logistically everything checks out. But I'd consider this a pretty preliminary meeting, just to get this idea, started. Again,
I think it's a great idea. Yeah, I appreciate the work you've done on this, and I think it's the fact that all the other schools in the valley or big districts in the valley have done this. I think it's an important thing, and I'm a big believer of it. But I do think that when we look at this, we need to consider whether it makes financial and environmental sense to do a battery system, or whether it just makes sense to generate and sell and pull at the same time. Which is what, you're still creating, you're still generating it for them. You just don't have to do all the rejiggering of your own systems to store. And then they're not used for emergency backup. I don't know if we have backup generators in the district or not. I assume we don't know. So it can solve that issue as well if you generate your own and store, but I'm not sure that's a huge issue. Other than about a month ago, but that was the internet, not the power too. So.
And now, thank you. Okay, and Dwayne, you want to go next?
Yeah, please. Brief, Jack, you're a rock star. Really appreciate you carrying you continue to carry the torch. I mean, some of us on the board here were with you back in 2017 with the team. And so you get an award for both, leadership, but also perseverance and grit. Well done. Super well done. This is great work. I mean, your presentation is one of the better presentations, frankly, we've heard. I mean, it's just, you did exactly what problem statement. You gave us the background, you gave us the context, you gave us some potential solutions, you made some recommendations, you're looking for feedback. You're a total rock star. Keep it up and make sure a lot of your buddies and friends around you are also taking note, because you're doing some great example stuff here. I ask you, are you willing to kind of stay on as a champion? Because this project is going to live beyond all of us. But that, in the short run, it'd be great to have you continue your performance and your role in some capacity. And it'd be great to get some lieutenants around you. I remember your work, obviously, in the facilities master planning. You were making these messages back then. This is still part of our conceptual strategic plan for facilities improvements. So you get to own some of that in the long run. I'd love to see your name on that stuff in 20 years from now. But in the short run, put aside the details of solar and its function, but just can I put you on the spot? Are you willing to kind of continue to be the champion and carry the torch? Yeah, I mean, I definitely plan on pursuing this outside of the end of high school. I've worked on this long enough where it's it's gone beyond being just kind of a pipe dream, where it's right. Right. I mean, we've got all the resources now for a great solution, right? We got the energy and the passion, but now we also have some of the financial resources to put, to invest in this thing. And this is super great. I'd love to see this become kind of a learning model. I'm sure the administrative leadership is licking its chops to partner up with you and to really achieve some progress here. So Keep it up, and I'd be shocked if someone said that they would not be willing to support this thing. So appreciate your perseverance. Well done, my friend. Well done.
Thank you.
Susan, go ahead.
Jack, thanks. This is really impressive, and I really appreciate your perseverance because we've kind of put you off for a little while, and now I'm really happy that you're able to give us this great vision you have. I was just going to ask Dr. Baugh if I know he has had some experience doing this in his previous district and with student involvement. So I just wanted to kind of hear from him about how that was structured and what he could see working here. Dave?
Thank you, Susan and Jack. I want to echo the sentiments of the board. This is a phenomenal presentation, and you really summed it up phenomenally. You clearly have done your homework, and the two models are spot on, and it's just we'd have to do the pro and con analysis. I'd love to talk with you more after this meeting, and I could also see you sort of co-chairing the Renewable Energy Committee of the bond as we're moving forward. This is part of, when we went to the street and asked the taxpayers to support us, this was part of our ask. So this is part of the DNA of this proposal. So I would love it if you would, consider being like the citizen co-chair of a subcommittee working on renewable energies and working towards net neutral. This is something that I believe in wholeheartedly. I believe it was the wave of the future 20 years ago, and it's time to catch that wave. It's the right thing to do, for generations to come. And to Mrs. Fisher's points, it's all about how we structure it. And you've clearly done a lot of the background work on this. So I'd be happy to talk with you further, and this could become a capstone project for you for graduation. And I could see you writing this into a bunch of great college essays about how you brought this to Aspen School District. So well done. Well done.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'd love to be a part of the environmental board for the bond.
Great. That'd be fantastic. And so thanks for the presentation, and I'll be reaching out in the next day or two, and we'll set up a meeting for early in the next year.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome.
Great. Thanks. Any other questions or comments from the board for Jack?
Let's see those pearly whites, Jack. You got to smile, my friend. There we go. Love you. Love you. You're absolutely it.
Thank you so much, Jack. That was awesome. That was really fabulous.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys letting me on.
So next, 5.2, Aspen Family Connections. Catherine,
Here I am.
are you here?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I thought
Good.
so.
Good. Well, thanks very much. Thanks very much for putting me after him. That was a low blow. No, but thank you very much for letting me come and talk a bit about Aspen Family Connections. I very much appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen because I have a brief presentation. I'm going to take you through it fairly fast because it is sort of Aspen Family Connections 101. But now I'm not seeing it. Not quite sure why. Sorry. Should be seeing it because it's right here. Here we go. Okay. Can you see it if I put it in present? Maybe that's better. There we go. All good? Thanks.
Good.
All right. Well, as I say, thank you very much. Aspen Family Connections is still fairly new. I think we're in year 4 of our existence within the school district. We were created as a result of a kind of joint initiative by a large number of organizations, but really spearheaded by the school district and by Pitkin County Human Services. And we were started with a startup grant from the Healthy Community Fund of Pitkin County Human Services. and by some other state grants, some of which we still have. And that's how we arrived in the school district in the middle of the 16-17 school year. So I'll keep it fairly quickly, but I've been living in COVID land, as we all have, for such a long time. I thought it might be worth going back a tiny bit to the sort of beginnings, right, to the story. What is the point of a school-based family resource center? Somebody told me last week there are actually family resource centers in 39 states now, which is quite interesting. It's a well-founded and well-established model, even in our own valley, where the Roaring Fork Family Resource Center in the Roaring Fork schools is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. So it wasn't, it's not a completely new idea, but simply put, we are here to support the non-academic lives of students and their families and help address students' barriers to success in school. So we really don't have an academic role at all, but we're here to support the school in dealing with all the rest. There is a number of other things that we do. We advocate for families. We advocate for what's called family voice, which is what people really need, as opposed to what we think they might need. And essentially our work is twofold. First of all, we provide a hub for families. We connect them to resources, and we do that through informational services, but also through detailed case management for people who have a greater need. And we are here to promote the notion of prevention. This is a very, very big part of what we're here to do, is provide and support prevention activities to help kids be successful in our schools. Because obviously, as I've put there, when families thrive, children thrive. I like this quote, and I refer to it quite a lot because I know it to be true that when kids are not successful in school, it's always really important to look at what's underneath, what's really going on in their lives. And this is something that schools, aren't necessarily geared up to do, although we have great services, great counselors, we have good supports in this school district. Some of the stuff, what we deal with is the rest, the other stuff that is preventing kids from being successful within our system. This is a little sort of summary of who we are right now, and it's a really wonderful team. I have to say, I want to give credit to Erin and Norma, who are, Erin Cummings and Norma have only been with us a year now. They just celebrated a year anniversary. Norma is the first, well, she's not our first bilingual case manager, but she's our first bilingual bicultural case manager, and her work has extraordinary impact. We provide intervention, as I said, resources, collaboration, and detailed case management for families who need it. We do a lot of prevention parenting work, and Meg Dangler helps me an enormous amount with that. We also make use of a lot of community resources. And we provide outreach and advocacy within the school and to the community to support what families need. So that's, in a nutshell, what we all do. And I personally run around trying to sort of manage it all. I dream up new projects. I often have to be dissuaded from pursuing my new projects because I have too many ideas, but essentially anything that can make our schools more responsive to families and more successful in supporting kids, we're interested in doing it. And in meeting gaps. The one thing we're not interested in is duplicating anything that anybody else is doing. I thought I'd give you a few facts and figures about case managers and explain to you a bit how that works. How do we meet families? Well, people refer them to us, and we have networks of meetings with school administration, schools counselors, special education support teams, and indeed many other interactions. We don't receive referrals directly from teachers as a rule. We like those referrals to be channeled through administration and through the school counseling networks, mainly because we want to make sure that everything that the school offers in terms of MTSS support or other kinds of support, that's already being maximized before we really get involved. We hold family meetings. That's a tried and tested mechanism by bringing resources to families. And we bring in partners and resources. So, whoever it is that family might be able to support that family is, who we bring in, as long as that's what they want. They have to be open to that. But it's it's a really good way of avoiding duplication, preventing families from running around from pillar to post trying to get help for whatever it is they need, whether it's mental health or economic assistance or advice about the juvenile justice system, or any number of things. And the family's 100% involved in putting together those meetings. This gives you a sense of what we deal with. First year I started, we worked with 86 families, and we are on track to be substantially ahead of that as this year, as you can see. I put the outreach number, we've got about 24, 25 families. We get a lot of phone calls. And also now, of course, families call us directly. And so every one of those calls is returned extremely quickly. And a lot of work goes into making sure that we hear what that family needs and steer them the best way possible. I put this in because we didn't renew this survey this year because obviously COVID has distorted everything that's going on and amplified everything that's going on. But as you can see, these are the sort of things that families come to us needing help with. And they range obviously very substantially. Child mental health is a very significant factor. Matching children to different forms of therapy. And we're lucky now that we have very, very good MindSprings therapists in the schools. But there are other therapists that families want to take advantage of. We work with Mac Bailey, who's a music therapist. We actually work with a large number of therapists in the Valley. Family is the big, the elephant in our room. And I put that in, it's really about family conflict. We see an enormous amount of fallout from divorce, separation, and other kind of family issues that is very difficult for children to navigate. It's extremely disruptive to their learning and to their school lives, and is probably the hardest thing that we have to deal with. We deal with a lot of economic need. Obviously, that's hugely changed. Truancy, substance abuse, you name it, we see it. We take everything very seriously, and without any kind of judgment. I think that's a very important feature of life in the Family Resource Centre. We don't judge anybody, and we treat them all with in total confidentiality. Okay, this is where we are sort of thinking about going. Huge thanks to Dave and Theron for and Adric for their enormous support for what we do, and their help for me in meshing what we do with the school's overall priorities. This is something that's been quite hard for me in the past. It was quite difficult for me to get a word in, and now I feel as though we're really, really heard, and we're interested in supporting in any way we can in terms of social emotional needs of students. Schools transitioning from one school to the next is a significant risk factor, and something that we can do much better and would very much complement, the board's thinking in terms of, greater coherence between our school buildings. We're missing opportunities potentially. Trauma-informed approaches, something we've talked about before, and school attendance, which remains a big issue. We're interested in prevention, and we, as you know, are going to have access to the City of Aspen's tobacco tax money to do some new work with partners around prevention and supporting parenting skills, children's engagement, extracurriculars. And we need more outreach. We need more people to know what we do and to come to us and to be helped. And this is my pandemic slide. Obviously, everyone is aware that we've been quite busy during the pandemic. And in a sense, it is, really has, the veil has fallen from what people might have thought it was like to live in Aspen, because the pandemic has exposed many of our frailties, I would say, as a community, and our structural weaknesses in terms of, financial life, what it actually means to live in this community. And it really also has exposed why you need a family resource centre, because we're in a great position to coordinate a ton of resources. This week we are Santa, we are the school district Santa, and we're putting together a lot of support for people around the holidays and gifts for children, and channeling a lot of community support for families to the families that most need it. These are some of the things we did. As you know, we're doing the food distribution, we're coordinating that for the county. We're coordinating volunteers in order to do that. And I think that's a great resource for the community, for the school community too, because many of them are people. We kept free and reduced lunch going during the summer, and we're busy fundraising to ensure that we can continue it even if school is remote and there's no food service in the normal way. We're paying out a lot of emergency financial assistance. We're at around $200,000 right now, which is money we've raised specifically for that purpose and only for that purpose. We're paying a lot of childcare, a lot of rent and mortgages, trying to help families work, especially, which is particularly challenging, as we know, because of school being, substantially or partially remote. We're sustaining a lot of supervised learning so that kids who need support and whose parents are unable because they're working to support their learning. And there's a lot of that. We're supporting a number of schemes, including one at the middle school now, which is proving very successful. So that's our intersection, our only intersection really with academic life, which is how can we provide funding to meet deficits, and we fund a lot of tutoring too. So, this is what we're doing. And I think that's where I'm at. I appreciate very much, the support of the board for what we do. It's never the main event, and it shouldn't be. The school's main event is educating children. But if we can help in any way to make your task and the task of the schools and and teachers and their administration easier, and obviously help families to support their children better, we're here to do it and open to many suggestions along those lines.
Great, thank you so much.
Well,
any questions from the board or anybody?
Thanks, Catherine. You are doing continue to do amazing work, and it's been really wonderful to see, all these families getting fed this summer and into the fall, and just, it's so broad based, and it really, helping take away the problems so we can focus on educating the kids. I think it's awesome. I just have one question as a point of clarification. You listed the number of families you have case management of. Are those Aspen School District families, or is Aspen School District a subset of those families?
Actually, that's a really good question. Thank you for asking it. I would say 99% of them are Aspen School District families at this point. Perhaps a few less. No, really, they're either Aspen School District families or they're families with children in preschools whose children will be coming to Aspen School District. But really, that's a large majority of our work. I think we have one family right now that's a community school family. We've had Country Day family, there's school district too. We've had Country Day families in the past, but really the vast majority are school district families.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Susie, if I may.
Definitely, Dwayne.
Catherine, thank you so much. Appreciate all the work, you and your team, rock stars for sure as well. I think about things in the funding capacity. So you're so gracious in the presentation. I really appreciate it. Obviously, there's always the need for the financial stability of the work that AFC is conducting. So I just wanted to underscore that here for a few moments. I know that it's several revenue flows and sources, and most recently you've partnered with Aspen Education Foundation. They've obviously stepped in to a very vital role with you and with the AFC. So I just want to make sure that for nothing else, we put on the record that we don't forget about this when we are budgeting and we're structuring it our side, and then we're encouraging other community partners to saddle up as well. So not any particular question per se. I just wanted to underscore that for the benefit of family connections, as well as just reminding partners in the community. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And I will say that, I'm not really here with a handout. The concern I have is only about the sustainability of this team, of the people who are working for us. And also I think, to underscore the delicacy of life when you're grant funded, because we know this year we got off lightly. We know that several of our major grants are going to go away. And we may find out pretty late in the day. So my only interest really is sustainability and, gentle and appropriate growth, but we're not really interested in a big expansion. We just want to do what we do right now and do it really well.
Great. Susan, any comments?
Just a big thank you. And I appreciate your presentation. It's helpful. And just really happy that you could kind of give us your background and also just what's going on currently with AFC, and just much appreciated all of your hard work and all of that of your team as well. So thanks.
Well, thank you. We're really here to serve the school district. And so whatever we can do to make lives better, that's what we're here to do.
Great. If there are no other comments, we can move on to 6.1. Thank you Dwayne, yeah. Thank you so much, Catherine Sand.
Thank you. Thanks, Susie.
Sure. So Dave, who should lead the discussion about the bond update, Linda, or who should we discuss this with?
Let's start with Linda. And Linda, would you like to provide a little information on the bond update?
Sure. Let me open this up and so we're all looking at the same page. So with this resolution that they put together, this is from Dan O'Connell, that you guys remember is our bond representative for the district. And he asked their attorneys to get together and put together a resolution. So if we have items that we need to purchase out of general fund, we can reimburse the general fund back for these purchases. So that's what this resolution is about. And I believe this was a sample that we have, because I saw some yellow still on here. So we want to be very specific about what types of items we're going to be buying. Like, for example, if we went to market in what we're hearing is maybe March or April, possibly, for our bond funding, that, and let's say we need to do some HVAC work, that we need to borrow some money from the general fund. We want to make sure that it is specifically bond related items that we had put inside of our bond language. So that is what this resolution is discussing. Are there any questions or?
If I may.
Yeah, of course, please.
Yeah, so the resolution, like you said, we have some fill-in items. We're going to discuss it here. We're going to take some action in a little bit. Obviously, between now and a little bit, we've got to fill in this resolution and or go at it from the perspective of approving it subject to some final completion and some variance, or if you will, some tolerance or thresholds. And I'm not suggesting that. I just want to make sure we understand our particular paths here. My question, Linda, you mentioned obviously Dan assembled this, or better said, he asked bond counsel to assemble. Just as a checks and balances, we typically throw these over to Dick Bump. You may have already done that, or you're anticipating to do that, or obviously our regular district counsel. It's always a good set of additional eyes and ears.
Okay, yes, I will throw that over after this. Perfect. So he can read through it and make sure he's in the know.
And we can approve it subject to that final legal review and analysis. And if there's anything material, and obviously Dick would be providing that counsel back at us, we can bring it back. And if you needed a special before the deadline of the end of the year, I'm sure that the board members would be tolerant of a special meeting just to ensure we get our documentation in place. Do you want to discuss the content of those 2 or 3 items of question? Did you want to review that right now, or what did you want to do?
I think, and Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we did have some items related to HVAC that we wanted to put in on this. And then we have kind of, we've been receiving knowledge of some real estate that could be advantageous to move forward and purchase on there according to employee housing. But you know, if anything,
air quotes,
yeah, it could fall through, it couldn't, but right. We want to be able to have that flexibility that, we have to move fast on it if a couple of these properties come available to us at a good price. that we could
That's
do
right.
that. We would borrow from the general fund to do that. And that's the main reason for this resolution. So we wouldn't
Yep.
have to go seek outside funding until our bonds, we issue those
Agreed.
bonds.
Yeah.
So
And so
I
the
have a
committee,
question about that, though. The HVAC was, some of the work was longer than 60 days ago, was it not? Is it 60 days a necessary thing, or?
Could I dive in there and provide some clarity? So the work we did on the HVAC was the bipolar ionization. There are still several HVAC units that are beyond end of life. They've shut down. They shut down a year or 2, 3 ago. The theater, the elementary school cafeteria, and I forget the third one, but they're gone. They're shot. They're not producing heat. They're blowing air, but they're not producing heat. So that's the HVAC work that we're talking about at this point. And then the other thing in this resolution is we have to pick an amount. And that's the important thing there. So we need to have a little discussion about that you don't want to have too much in there or else that raises eyebrows downstream. I think what the IRS Dan said. So we need to pick an amount, probably, a couple $1 million, something like that. And we could roll this into either a special meeting with some definitive numbers, as we're crunching numbers, to Linda's credit, she just got back and has been digging through, I'm sure, the thousands of emails she got. So I think that's really, that pertains to the HVAC. And then the other piece is that, we really need to think about how much we want to put in this resolution.
But were there not expenses that we had related to this that we were going to pay out of the bond that are older than 60 days?
No, I think what you're talking about is some of these problems we had with the HVAC on heating, we were not aware of until we were putting the bipolar units in. And we're not going to include the bipolar units in on this bond money.
Were there not expenses related to the consultants and stuff as well, though?
yeah, timeline wise, Katie's referring to, thank you, Katie, right. So the consultants, the support of the bond campaign, separate and apart from any particular, citizen-led stuff, it's just straight up. So if that's something to check, you're right, Katie, it's got the 60-day time fuse, right? A suspense of 60 days. Anything outside of 60 days, it looks like per the language is not reimbursable.
You know what? That's a question I'm going to have to defer when I talk with Dick.
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Bump on there, because I know we can include some of these like startup costs inside of here. And I don't think that abides by the 60-day rule. When we asked them to draft this resolution, we weren't thinking of those costs. We were thinking about some real estate opportunities and HVAC.
So proof that up. That's exactly right. This is a very valid material question. And Dick or Dave, you were of the same mind. I could tell you were thinking the same thing. If we need to go special, we can go special. But it's my understanding, and I'm not an attorney, but I've done enough of the bond issuances that I believe that window is actually broader than what's being represented here. So let's proof that up.
Yeah, Dan or the attorneys at Kutak Rock could probably.
Dan certainly gave us the impression that some of this
Yeah.
was able to be included once it passed. So
Yeah,
That was
Because
my
I wanna
impression.
Make sure we don't mess it up so that we can't include stuff that we intended on including. So
Right.
That's a good point.
that, and we also want to take a look at doing some roof replacement on the high school, where we had some pretty significant problems over the years. And so we definitely wanted to try to get an estimate of that cost. Because that's pretty darn urgent, actually.
Yeah. And I like the way that this resolution, I'm sure the other board members would agree with this. I like the way that you guys have organized this, so that it's internally consistent, obviously with the representations made to the community. So every move we make on this bond from start to finish is going to be internally consistent with that which we asked the taxpayers, as Dave referred to earlier this meeting. And that's what's beautiful about this particular procedure. It's all transparent, and it's down to the dollar, and it ties back to the purpose and needs of the bond. It's perfect.
And Linda, also, I think it might be a good idea to have the source of funds that this might come out of the capital reserve, as well as the general fund, just because we've got money in there. And I think that sounds like a good idea to include that as well.
That's
Concur.
true. Since these are capital related purchases, we'll probably expense them initially out of cap reserve.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
And I see Dwayne and Katie both nodding, so,
Yeah.
so that's good. Okay,
So you'll get back to us with what you think is an amount, and then also just the answers to those questions. Is that how we should do this?
I think that's the best way. Are you
Yeah.
thinking of something else, Dave?
For some reason, I felt that this was fairly time sensitive. Do you?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think it's tonight. I don't think it's tonight, but I do believe it's probably a few days before the end of the year, right?
Yeah, I do think it's a before the end of the year thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I said that we may need to do a special board meeting, a business meeting to call it for action, but that's pretty straightforward to do.
Yeah, we could do that. And that way we can check on, we'll check on all these questions, but you could also check on the timing too. So if we can wait till January, maybe that we can, but I kind of got the impression that it needs to be done soon as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we try to do it before you guys shut down for the break too, that would be obviously most helpful for everyone.
Yeah. The other way to approach it would be a not to exceed, and we could do that this evening, and then we could check the legal nuances tomorrow during business hours. And then if we did need to convene a special meeting, we could advertise it and get it up and running before the end of the year.
I'm worried about that 60-day thing though.
I am too. Yeah. Outside of the values, I'm actually concerned about that window of time. Yeah, that's what Katie's saying. Yeah.
But that was a good catch, Susan, on the other fund too.
Yeah, I think that was Linda's suggestion, but I think it's a good one. So let's just get all those things kind of cleared up. It's not hard for at least 3 of us to
That's right.
join a meeting and just approve something once we've got all the details hashed out.
Agree.
Okay.
And I think to manage expectations, build on what Dave was saying earlier in terms of the scopes, I think what we're going to enter there, this value, the advanced amount is going to be fairly robust, and as staff has suggested, somewhat, includes all the kind of the outside assumptions and have some conservatism and some extra spread on top of that, such that this is going to be multiple millions of dollars. Because indeed, we may over the next 4 or 5 months find some opportunistic real estate. And if you remember, the number one driver for this bond was to attract and retain quality talent throughout the organization, which is code speak for finding some good housing. And there may be some opportunities here and there. Just want to be prepared and have some powder dry to go.
And I guess, when you're talking to Dan, it might be helpful to know what is the largest amount before we start to whatever the concern is there. Dave, you have a.
So I just pulled up the email from Mr. Welley, Tom, and the maximum amount we could reimburse ourselves is the full amount that we've gone to the street for, but they don't actually recommend that.
Yeah.
So, I think you'd be very safe with authorizing up to $5 million or something like that right now. They did say that, you have to identify the source of the district funds that will be paid back. They just went with the general fund, but it could be cap reserve. So we can put that in there. And then they just listed projects, which are the ones that we actually got taxpayer approval for. So that's kind of where we are on that. I'm trying to find the email on the timing.
I would imagine if we have some real estate opportunity, we might want to have a higher number than 5. So I think we should, just knowing the market here, I think we should see how far we can push that, knowing that we have, what's a capital reserve fund? Is it what right now, Linda?
We
4 or
currently
5?
have around 2 million sitting in
Oh,
there.
okay.
The
So
thing that
that
I am a little worried about, and Dan said he could work through that with us, is our cash balance. Because remember, this is our cash flow time. So we
Right.
have to borrow additional funding from the zero interest loan program.
Or we could just go to market sooner.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
That's one reason not to wait too long. To have access to it. And I think I agree with Dwayne. I think we kind of get the maximum amount that they'll let us do based on, all these balances in the various funds and those things, and go with that. It's not saying we're going to use it. It's just saying we have the ability to use it.
Correct. You could easily authorize up to 15, 20 million if you wanted to. We don't really have it in the cap reserve or general
Right.
fund to pull
Right.
it from there. So we would,
Go to the market.
yeah,
We go to the market quicker.
go to the market quicker.
Yeah, these are
Yeah.
good, these are good issues to be wrestling with, but I think we just want to make sure we get the timing, correctly represented, right? And then we go conservative with our number for the insert here, and then we'll continue to analyze when we go to the market faced with the scopes of work that we want to take on and the pace at which we want to go, which I think is fast, fast, fast.
Yeah,
Famous last words.
I agreed. All right, let us get you some answers. If tentatively, this would be probably one of the number one things for January 4th agenda. Sounds like we might need to have that, or we have to have a special meeting prior to
Right.
January 4th.
And that's okay.
Yep. Yes, it is.
If we could move these questions, if we could get resolution quickly in the next couple days, maybe we could have a special session like on a Friday or something of this week.
Sure.
To
Yep.
get it. And it won't last long. It would be a short.
Mhm.
Yeah, Friday, 8 p.m., something like that. That'd be great.
A reminder, we just need 24 hours before we post the meeting.
Great.
And Eliza, we just have to advertise that, right?
Yeah, we just have to put it on board docs as a public document, 24 hours.
So we could even
Friday, start time.
tentatively schedule a special meeting for Thursday. You'll advertise it while Linda and I run these questions down. We'll let
Yeah.
you know by noon tomorrow.
Great,
Perfect.
thank you. So we
Thanks.
obviously will not vote on 7.3. We'll just, so we'll now move on to 6.2, the superintendent update.
Great, thank you. Eliza, can you begin screen sharing? All right, next slide, please. So we've been trying to build a COVID dashboard for some time, and I want to thank Chris Durham and Eliza for countless hours of work in putting this together. And it's live on the website now. It's been there for a few days, and we'll give you a quick glance at it. It gets updated daily so that you can kind of see our numbers. So this is a rolling total for the last 14 days of where we are. And we thought that this would be helpful for people to see just what's happening where, and it's trying to provide an upper level look at things. So you can see the positive cases. We've had 8 cases in the last couple of weeks, and that we've sort of been grappling with as a school district. We think there's some cases out there that we haven't been grappling with, but we don't know those for sure. So this is our quarantine information. We've had a couple of cases of late that have caused a couple of basically elementary classrooms and a bus full of students to be quarantined. So you can kind of see where this is. And when you combine the last couple of days, we jumped to 72 folks in quarantine. So we're hoping that this can provide sort of a snapshot, kind of a local perspective of where we are and kind of what we're sort of grappling with as a learning organization. And so that's our, and again, that's updated usually around 2 o'clock most days, give or take, depending on how busy our our data inputters are at the course of during the day. But it just depends on if Eliza's free around 2, then it gets updated. So, but again, thanks to Chris, Durham, and Eliza for putting together our COVID dashboard. I know it was quite a task to get something like that together. All right, we are continuing testing. This Wednesday, we'll have 2 sites again, and we'll be, we sent it out to all staff and families on Friday. Eliza will be sending out the invitation again after this board meeting. From the past 2 sessions, we had quite a bit of testing and relatively few positives. So that's very exciting. So we really thank all our families and staff for following protocols and masking up and, washing hands and doing the best they can to keep the social gatherings to a minimum, because that seems to be where it's occurring. So please feel free to sign up for testing. We're happy to get you tested. We had a little glitch with the first round on December 3rd. The company was really backlogged. So people were taking the tests on December 9th and just getting the results on December 9th in the morning. So, but they seem to be moving right along at this point. Next slide, please. Yes, the very low positivity rate, at least internally. So that's exciting. Again, we want to thank everyone for helping keeping our schools relatively safe compared to the numbers out in the greater community. I'm always guardedly optimistic. I was on a meeting with the governor and some of his task force on opening schools in January, and we're getting more guidance from the governor and CDPHE tomorrow. I do want to thank everyone for being very prudent over the Thanksgiving holiday. Very few cases occurred as far as our testing indicated. So I want to thank everyone for that. And, as everyone knows, winter break is coming. So we're going to ask you to do it all again. Really keep those masks on, be very careful if you have to travel. Take advantage of our testing. We'll be offering testing again in January. It'll be the Wednesday or Thursday we get back. As always, it's voluntary, but please take advantage of that. And again, we are very appreciative of everyone following our layered mitigation strategy. Next slide. Quick middle school principal search update. As you can see here, the job's posted, search team's forming. As of this morning, 14 applicants. Dan, do you have anything to add to this?
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I can just add a little bit of detail here. So we're taking the posting period to really try and distribute news of the posting as broadly as possible, really meet that idea of a national search. So we've posted to just about every free job board that I know of, School Spring, JobLift, Colorado Jobbing, all of those, and also looking at some more targeted cost-based advertising to really get the word out on some nationally recognized K-12 boards and that sort of thing. I also anticipate that before we leave for break, we'll have more of an official announcement made regarding the search committee makeup and what the process is going to look like, and a little bit more information about what the district and everybody can expect in terms of timeline. Not super detailed, but detailed enough that give a good idea of what folks can expect over the next couple of months. And that we'll just be closely monitoring the applicant pool. And if it doesn't look like we're getting sufficient interest, I think 14 applicants is actually pretty good given the amount of time that it's been posted. But of course, we'll stay closely attuned to that to make sure the pool continues to fill out well. So.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that, those details. So we have some academic updates from the field. Why don't we start with Chris over at Aspen Elementary School?
All right. Thank you, Dave. In a year bereft of good news, the elementary school got some great news this weekend when we learned that our 4th grade teacher, Katie Fox, has become nationally board certified teacher, which is quite a distinction. Less than 3% of teachers across the country are able to attain that. Katie's amazing, child-centered, just an amazing teacher, reflective. And, for her to kind of finish the program off during a pandemic, this is like a brand new territory, even for us. So I just wanted to share with you how really proud we are of Miss Katie Fox. Just one other thing before I get into some of just a few of my talking points. I wanted to speak to you for a minute from the heart, just kind of share with you how immensely proud I am of everyone at the elementary school who took on a challenge like no other to get our kids safely in school during this pandemic. In long distance running, we have an expression: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So back in August, we locked arms and we went together. Just a few short months ago, we occupied 3 different buildings on this campus, which speaks to the flexibility and can-do attitude of our teaching staff and our entire staff. There certainly was some fear to get around, but I've never seen a building come together and row in the same direction toward one goal like I have with Aspen Elementary School. It's really quite humbling for me. This is everybody: teachers, administration, support staff, working toward one goal for kids and families. We knew there'd be some bumps in the road, and there have been, but when confronted with challenges, we've met them with calm, poised, and a child-centered approach. Our amazing parents have been right there with us, supporting and encouraging us during some of the rougher times. We're so grateful to have them for being amazing partners in education. And I'm also extremely grateful for the support of the Board of Education, Superintendent Baugh and Assistant Superintendent Mulberry, who have helped guide us through this really unprecedented time in our history. So we're looking forward to the new year, and we'll tackle the challenges as they come our way, but we'll do it together. So I want to share that with you. Just a couple of other notes of what's happening in the building. So professional development, we had some really great PD that focused on differentiation and technology. Of course, this was all done remotely, so a lot of this is newer to us, getting PD exclusively in a remote way, but it was very successful, and it really focused also on a piece of technology called Pear Deck, which is a great tool for our teachers, which allows them to teach synchronously and basically provides the students with their own little whiteboards and their own areas to work, and the teacher can see it and give them feedback. And so I thought that was very helpful to us. On a completely different note, but just completely lovely, was we were treated to coffee and donuts courtesy of our PTO, who remains the greatest PTO on the planet. And it was a bummer they couldn't have been in the building to watch the teachers enjoy coffee and donuts, because it really brightened all of our days. And that was last week. So super grateful to the PTO as always. Remote learning is obviously less than ideal with elementary students. We've talked about this since the springtime, and everybody on this call certainly recognizes its challenges, but that doesn't mean there aren't some pretty amazing things happening. Last week, I observed an online publishing party in a first grade classroom, which was absolutely phenomenal. So it was so great to have the parents on their machines at home in breakout rooms with groups of kids as they shared their writing. And so it was just really, really super fun. That was in Jen Liddington's classroom. And the amount of work it takes for it to look as seamless and as flawless as it did is immense. What she had to do to get everything arranged. And of course, big payoff, but I just thought it was really cool. We're also having success with some tools called Seesaw and Kahoots and Jamboards. So when we have to go remote, we're in a much better place clearly than we were when we started down this road in the springtime. Last thing I have to share is the results of our asymptomatic COVID testing. It did result in the quarantining of one fourth grade classroom, one first grade classroom, and then, as Dave mentioned earlier, the 31 bus riders that we had to quarantine yesterday. But again, we knew these things would happen, and I'm just so impressed with the calm and flexibility and the can-do attitude of those that are impacted. And that's not just the teachers, but the kids as well as the parents. So it's just kind of something we're going to have to work through. I'm sure this isn't the last time we'll be having this discussion this year, but it's just really proud of everybody and for rolling with it and trying to make the best out of a not so great situation. That's all I've got, Dave.
Thank you, Chris. I was just trying to make sure that I was muted so that you had full stage. All right, let's go to the next slide, the middle school. Liz, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Chris. That was a great presentation. Sorry, Liz. I did want to thank Chris for that. I did just want to say I dove into that publishing party as well, and that was truly impressive. So hats off to all of our great teachers struggling in this really tough environment. Liz, the ball is now firmly in your court, and I promise not to interrupt again.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Well, as you may recall, the middle school led the way in March with developing online learning in a pretty abrupt fashion. Our original plan was to keep it simple, and we felt like that was the best approach. And as a result, our teachers have been able to really build their skill set from a very sort of simple approach to Google Classroom to now using a variety of technology and applications. So we're reporting success. Teachers are using a lot of variety in terms of starting out with introduction to a lesson and then moving into either a slide presentation, a breakout group, a video, or a pear deck, which can be an interactive aspect of remote learning. So when we see consistency in the remote learners, we are seeing success. What's difficult is when we have intermittent student attendance, and some of our students are remote, and some of them are in person, and some are catching up after having been gone. So just like when we're in sort of normal school, attendance is important. It's true with remote teaching as well. We have about 30 to 40% of our students choosing to be remote at times. And again, it can be intermittent instead of being in person during their in-person learning week. And that's been a challenge for teachers and students alike. However, as I said earlier, technology has really improved our ability to assess students' learning and to start the lesson with kind of some review and determining where students are in the work. Wednesday is now delivered live instead of asynchronous. And we have a little bit shorter of a day so that the bus can transport the middle school kids before they do their elementary run. So we're Wednesdays is 9 to 12:50. And that way we're able to feed our kids lunch as well. There's been a wonderful collaboration between Aspen Family Connections, the Aspen Youth Center, and the middle school. And we now have a supervised learning space in the middle school for mostly 8th grade students, but we're expanding to 7th grade for students that are struggling with the online learning model. And that's been highly successful in terms of having qualified personnel in the room to help students with their engagement. Jason and I have been able to observe quite a few classes over the last few weeks, and I really invite the board to grab a link to one of the classes and see what kinds of imaginative and creative things teachers and kids are doing in this new environment, the remote learning. It's pretty exciting, and it's also a lot of work, and I think everybody's looking forward to winter break. So that's all from me. Theron, do you want to add anything to that?
I just want to echo some of the things you said, Liz, about what happened with the collaboration for the supervised learning program that's working up in the media center. What a great success that's been in getting some of the students that are most challenged in there. And I think what a creative solution, and just hats off to all the folks that made that possible, Liz, Jason, and team. And just I also want to just name the counselors. Andrea and Nick have done a great job too of making sure that that's working. And of course, the ever-present Aspen Family Connections, in particular, Meg Dangler and Rachel Eiler. So congratulations to all those folks for making a pretty successful program. And we're excited to expand that to the 7th graders soon.
Can I ask a question? If you guys are almost done with there. So just to be clear, because I think I know what's going on, but I'm not sure everybody who's watching this. 5th and 6th are in person, but 7th and 8th are not. So the numbers that you're talking about for kids going back and forth and for concurrent learning and all that, that's just relevant to 5th and 6th grade right now.
Thanks for asking. I really appreciate that, because we just, as you know, we just started our back to our 5th and 6th in person. And in fact, 5th grade is the most consistent with attendance in person. They have the lowest numbers of students that are choosing to not attend in person. As you go up in grades, since for most of the semester, 7th and 8th have been in person, that's where our numbers are coming from. So the 30 to 40% represent 5th through 8th grade during the time when we were in the hybrid model, where half the kids come one week and half of the kids come the other week. Thanks.
Okay, but since our last board meeting, it's only been 5th and 6th grade that have been in person.
Correct.
So that it's not. So what kind of numbers are you having for 5th and 6th grade, which is really the only relevant one today, like as of the last couple of weeks?
5th grade have fairly good attendance. So I'm gonna kind of ballpark it, but I'd say maybe 80% of the 5th grade attend, and maybe 60 to 75% of the 6th graders attend. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than losing 40% of the kids. And so, yeah.
So then the second question is, if we have, I'd love to hear what our plan is for January for 7th and 8th grade as well. But as far as one thing that I'd like to be considered is, the whole school doesn't need to necessarily be on the same schedule if half the school is remote and the other half is, 5th and 6th is going to school. But the question is, why a 4-hour school day for kids who don't have any transportation issues? There isn't a bus issue on Wednesday for the 7th and 8th graders. So I just would like that to be looked at, because we already have an hour shorter a day for school for these kids. And then a 4-hour day on Wednesday. I appreciate we're moving to asynchronous, but we're still cutting out a lot of hours. And if they're not going to be live, then it seems there's no good reason not to have a full day that I've heard, so those are my questions related to that. But I would like to hear, if there's a way we could consider, not just 5 and 6, but also 7th and 8th as we move forward here.
Yeah, I think what we're learning is that when students are in person, that is our best case scenario. And we really agree that we want our students in the building. Wednesday afternoon allows teachers to do their planning, and typically our early release day is 2 o'clock. So you're right, we're an hour shorter on that day.
We're 2 hours shorter.
Well, with the
Start at
morning.
9.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
we're
2/3 of what a normal Wednesday is.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to getting the governor's report and hoping that will help guide us for January 4th and beyond. So.
Right, and Kate, we're doing most of the transportation pieces are around contact tracing right now. As soon as we're able to get some of that lifted, we could have a similar bus schedule, transportation schedule, and be able to meet some of those requirements. Right now, the staggered schedule is just all a result of some of the limitations we have for contact tracing. So in addition to that, the regular professional development schedule on Wednesdays too. Very excited though that the team is going back to a synchronous model for the Wednesday crew and making sure we have live instruction there.
Yeah, I guess related to the transportation that I would love to have some follow-up as we move forward once we determine what the model is. We had K through 4, all the students, and then the other bus set was supposed to be middle school and high school. And I'm curious if we have 2 more grades and they're quarantining the whole bus anyway, why we can't go back to the 8 a.m. and get everybody on the same schedule if it's just 2 more grades and not the rest of the school. So, if there's a way to get, I'm just fighting for more hours for the kids of learning. That's kind of what I'm talking, what my goal is here.
That's noted. Beyond contact tracing, it's also the separation to cut down on transmission, right? Because for quite a while, they've been talking about different transmission rates between older kids and younger kids, which is why we now have 2 bus runs. So that was the primary purpose, was to separate older youngsters from younger ones. And again, the model's working pretty well as is. We get that, now that our second bus run is just hybrid 5th and 6th graders. Those buses are lightly traveled, as it were. They don't have a lot of customers, if you will, but that's the bus is definitely kind of the Achilles heel of the entire cohort model, right? Because you have your cohort as a class, but then you have this other cohort that is a bus. And if they're on there for more than 15 minutes, that becomes a cohort. So, it's tricky getting everybody in and keeping them in. We do hear you on the hours, and it concerns us. And as we're looking at next year, that's a definite factor.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Theron. Appreciate the update. Sarah, are you available?
Good evening, everybody. I really want to start off with a moment of gratitude for Reagan Mahaffey, our Director of Transportation. Today, I had this idea that we would go and deliver coffee and cards and donuts to all of our seniors to make them feel special. But I also knew it was a big undertaking. And so Reagan actually designed 3 different routes, one for me, one for Becky, and then we were going to have Martha deliver as well, but she had to quarantine. So we got Josh Barrow to step in, and it was great. We had a dedicated route, and we went door to door to every senior's home today. I remember looking at the list thinking, this isn't going to take me 5 hours. I'll be done by noon. Yes, so not true. I got in my car at 7:30 and I got home at 5. So it does take a while, but thank goodness Reagan actually did these routes. So kudos to her. You can see what a great organizational system she has to run these buses. So, and it's also a celebration. It was really great to see some kids. Some kids were kind of emotional. Other kids were sort of shocked. One student was like, "Oh no, I thought I was in trouble." So it was a mixed bag, but it was a great way to start off a Monday, to start off this last week of school, help our seniors feel a little loved. We know that it's really tough for everybody, but I also think our seniors more so than anyone, we're mourning, you know, this fall semester. And then you add in college acceptances time, and they're feeling some stress too. So we thought that'd be, you know, a fun little thing to do for them. Let's see. So we've heard from both Chris and Liz that Pear Deck is really popular, and I think, you know, our team, our teachers actually brought that to the district as something they'd been modeling, and our tech integrators ran with it and got everybody on board. And it's a really great way to ensure that kids are engaged, because it is really difficult in a remote setting to look at a bunch of dark boxes with just names, or you put kids in a breakout room and you don't really know what they're doing. But with Pear Deck, each student has to participate, and the teacher can then see all of their individual responses. So it has an added layer of accountability. It really captures their thinking, and then it captures it permanently. So a teacher actually has a spreadsheet of all the students' comments, questions, and ideas, which is just a really great tool in this environment. Similarly, we have something called Parlay that we have a bunch of teachers doing, and that really helps students have online discussions, simply because, you know, that awkward moment when everyone unmutes at the same time or people talk over each other. And for some kids, it's very nerve-wracking. So Parlay allows students to click a button, and it says they either have a new idea, a question, or they want to build upon an idea. And it goes really, really smoothly. So we've got some teachers really working hard to ensure that those robust conversations are happening. We just had another training on Rocket Books, which will be really relevant as we move into final exams. Final exams cannot take a traditional, they can't be traditional. I think I've said before, if you can simply, you know, Google it, it's not really effective. So we have to really drill down and think about getting kids to capture their ideas and their thinking in an authentic way. And so one of those is writing, and the Rocket Books allow you to write just like you would for IB exams, and then you just upload it to the file, and the teacher can grade it and comment right on it. And it's pretty amazing technology. We also have people doing demonstrations. Students are recording themselves and doing some one-on-one as we think about final exams. Obviously, we're currently remote, but we do have some different groups of students in the building. So our at-risk team and our MTSS team came together and identified students based on myriad criteria who really needed to be in the building. Some of that was grades, some of it was teacher recommendation, some of it was the resiliency assessment, and some of it was students actually asking for a different place to learn. So we do have students come, we had students come in last Wednesday. This week we have students coming in every day. And so really trying to get those students support. Our ESS students continue to come into the building, and they are in a 2-day-a-week model with their case managers, but it may be more. It really is individualized for those student needs. We have allowed athletes to come back in the building. We're trying to follow those Pitkin County guidelines very closely. So there are no group sports indoors, but you may train or condition. So people register ahead of time. It's 9 students and a coach. And you can have up to 10 people in each area. So the weight room and the track is one area, the big gym is the second, and the skier dome is the third. So at any given time, we could have, you know, upwards of about 30 people in the building. And Martha and Larissa have worked hard to put together a schedule so everyone knows where they are. We have all the lists so that we can do contact tracing. So when we found out we had some positives this weekend, we just pulled up spreadsheets to see if any of those students had been in the building. We have also, Becky has taken the lead with our workshops, enrichment and intervention. Andy Poppenchak will be starting a once a week sort of advanced literature study, Socratic style, that starts this Wednesday. Some parents had asked for that, and I asked him to do me this favor, and I think he's really excited. He gets to do all the best parts of teaching, just read great literature, talk to students, and no grades. So I think those are gonna be some quality conversations, and I promised I would read one text and lead one discussion. So hopefully I'll get in on that. We're also trying to address social emotional needs. So we've had a counselor from Pathfinders who came and met with students. Our counselors are going to do mental health for the holidays this week. We had Erin Garland come and do time management. And the boosters have sponsored 25 gingerbread house kits, and so there's going to be a competition. So these workshops takes place at early release Wednesday, so after 1:30 on Wednesday. They will take place on Friday if a student doesn't have a club during that crew time, and then there are a couple that are short that would take place on Tuesday if there isn't there's one Tuesday a month that isn't spoken for crew. We just started our teachers meeting in their grade level teams. We've really been focused at the high school on content level teams. So your 9th grade English teachers, your 9th grade social studies teachers, but we actually did grade levels, so cross content area. And it was really successful looking at the STAR data, PSAT, SAT data, the resiliency data, and our DNF list to really look at which students are falling behind and who may need an intervention. And I think the teachers were really positive. So we'll continue with that work. Like I said, exams around the corner. So we do have 2 weeks when we get back from the holiday break. I've been in conversations with Dr. Baugh about how we're going to get kids in and what that will look like. And I'll certainly communicate that to students, staff, and families prior to the winter break. Our goal really is to get kids in the building. We do want kids to be able to have FaceTime with some teachers. As Liz mentioned, the concurrent, model is really difficult. I think our students didn't love it, and neither did our teachers. But for the week that students are there and seeing teachers, they really appreciate it. Our exams will have to be fully remote in terms of equity. We can't have half the students in the building and half the students at home. So they will be fully remote, and our teachers are, working really creatively to make sure that those exams actually capture learning based on the pre-assessments they've done at the beginning of the year. And then we'll go ahead and do another round of STAR data in January, probably the end of January, and we'll see if we can't, if we've done some growth. And again, we'll use that to decide about interventions that we may need to take on. And I think that's about it.
I have a question, Sarah.
Sure.
As always. The Rocket books.
Yep.
A technology that only the high school is utilizing. I have no clue how expensive those are or how they work. My understanding is it looks like a white plastic piece of paper basically that you write on.
Yep.
And it can scan. Is that something that the other school that you've talked to the other schools, other principals about as a possible technology for other kids, given that I would think younger kids might have an easier time with a pencil than a computer?
They really might, we have not. And again, that's probably my fault because we still have been trying to really get our teachers up to speed. I have to be perfectly honest. I've had that Rocketbook since August, my own, and I've just started using it because of the onslaught of technology. That said, I know Kim Zimmer, our tech integrationist, just went to a seminar where she actually learned the next level of Rocketbook. So it's all about design and how you use it for art and drawing, and Steph Nixon is using it. So I think what we did at the high school is, in years past, when students paid fees, one of the fees was a printing fee for $25, and we got rid of that because no one's printing, and we then gave a fee for the Rocketbooks. So I would be happy to have my staff come, and I think Kim Zim would be happy to come and show the other buildings. It is a pretty cool tool, just because you just take your phone and you take a picture and you just upload it right to a Google Classroom or to an email. And it's a lot easier to see student thinking and work than, let's say, if you were just, some students will just take a picture. When it's uploaded, it's clear, it's big, it's easy to see. So I'm happy to talk with, Chris and Liz, or to have Kim's more of an expert than I am, or some of our teachers who are using it, Mark Whitley using it in physics. It's astounding what kids are doing. And it's really cool because they don't have to, use their computer to do, to write out an entire hypothesis or a proof or something. They can just write it and upload it.
I just, in the context of trying to have a pre-K through 12, I don't know at what point the technology is good for, what age or whatever, but certainly let's make sure we're sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'd be great if if Chris had a teacher in mind that might want to, demo it and see if it's good, because it is, there's a lot of steps to it. I would worry about elementary school kids, you have to have a phone and take a picture and all of this, but there could be some cool uses of it. And certainly it could be used at the middle school.
Okay.
So,
Then
yeah.
my second question is, when you're talking about, checking all these various tests to make sure students are falling behind, and this kind of goes for everybody. I think it's important to make sure that we're not just looking at like the grade level line. Every kid is different, and every kid deserves growth every year. And so the question is, when we're looking at this, are we looking at how they're doing relative to past performance, not just relative to what the bar is,
Yes, thank you for asking that. I should have been clear on that. So some of the students that we are targeting and focusing on are those students who would have been straight A students who now have C's, right? Or those students whose parents have reached out and said, my student used to love school, and you look at their record and they were really engaged in doing things, and now they really don't want to be here. And so those students are also coming in, and we're looking at that as well. We're trying to, MTSS and at-risk are pretty overwhelmed with the numbers of students for outreach. However, it's not just students who may have a D or an F, you're correct. Even those students who are still getting A's and B's, but seem to be completely disengaged, and teachers are reporting, that they're just not asking questions in class, or they're not turning in homework regularly. So yes, we are targeting all of those students as well.
And that kind of goes back to the middle school too, that you guys mentioned, the support learning program that is being started with Aspen Family Connections in the youth center. And the question there is that just kids who are struggling in the same context of they're kind of the bottom of the grade and struggling to show up and that type of thing, or is it also kids that are just not where they were before, not doing what they were before, not as interested as they were before, and kind of falling into a different category, which I'm hearing from a lot of parents of concern about kids who were straight A students who are now struggling to even keep the camera on, right? So I just want to make sure that as we're looking at different levels of support for these kids, as while we're not in school, that we're considering each kid as an individual. And I know that's hard to do, but I think it's important to do. So thanks.
Sure.
So Dave, we have two attachments. You want to briefly mention those?
Well, we actually have just a little bit more. The board had asked for some more information on IB, and so Theron and Eileen had put together a quick presentation. We'd like to run you through that real quick,
Sure.
if we may. and so this is kind of an overarching concept. You know, it's kind of getting at the nature of what schooling should be. And, you know, many of us tend to think that it should be inquiry based, and IB seems to help a lot with that because things keep changing, right? And the ability to be able to communicate your thoughts is huge, and to have new thoughts is even more important. So, you know, we really think that the framework of IB is helpful in this work. So, and, you know, so we kind of started with the why, and, you know, Eileen and Theron can dive in as well, but, you know, there's a huge amount of teacher expertise and a huge amount of teacher autonomy in IB. And, you know, if I've learned one thing in the last few months, it's that our teachers really value their autonomy and their expertise. So, you know, I just wanted to touch on that point quickly. Theron or Eileen, do you want to kind of talk about this a little bit more?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. So most of what you see on this slide is from research and interviews over the past 2 weeks. I talked with a lot of teachers, many that are in our district that have experience with the MYP and the PYP, and also from other schools. And a few things that were stressed were this transfer skills, and that the IB and the philosophy is thinking skills and skills that students will use in all classes and will use beyond the classroom. I also went and looked at a 3rd and 4th grade state test on CDE's website, just a sample test. And because it was said that it's all about skills development and application, and I totally agree. There was one specific question that it gave the answer. It said 63 divided by 9 is 7. And then it said, when would you actually have to divide the 7 into the 63? And it gave 4 options. So it wasn't about the actual division answer, but it was about when would I actually need to divide 2 numbers. So it really was stressing this idea of the importance of transfer skills. And let's see, just that common language it would provide for the district. New teachers coming to the district would know already our philosophy. The values of IB are a part of what we believe in Aspen as a community and also in the school district. I actually found one of our policies that talks about almost the exact same characteristics that we think are important align with the IB learner profile. So I linked that document there, but I'm sure you already have it. Let's see. And then the 3-person team. So like I'm the coordinator of the diploma program, we would appoint people to be the PYP coordinator and the MYP. So we'd have like a 3-person director of curriculum where we have this conversation happening all the time. And then the last thing I wanted to add, and I know Theron's trying to sneak in, is this. Every single person I talked to, every single interview that I had, they said it is doing what's best for students. And that's what I ended the slide with. Go ahead, Theron.
Well, I just really cannot reiterate how important it would be to have a person at each grade level handling the curriculum pieces of the work. I think we've already seen how it looks as a district director being in charge of things and having that as an oversight. But I just think you're not going to have the kind of attention to detail that you have that what we've seen at the high school and the diploma program. You'd have that same oversight and that same constant ability to touch base at each level with a coordinator in every building. And what's really cool is they would have the opportunity to cross collaborate as well in creating that vertical alignment that we've all really wanted to happen. So that's really important to have. So I just wanted to say that part. Go ahead, Eileen, you're doing great.
Thank you. I think we can go to the next slide. So on here, one of the questions that was asked was, how will IB, this alignment connect with our curriculum issues. So I have the 8 subject guides for the middle years program that I included there. Each one is about 60 to 70 pages long. And I think last time when we talked and we said things, it was a framework, maybe it wasn't explained enough that there still are guidelines within the framework for each of the subjects. So we don't have enough time to look through those guides tonight, but they are included there. And in addition, the PYP framework, which we talked about last time, and the program of inquiry, which would connect grade to grade. I just wanted that to be included here. Let's see, we also talked about how this framework would stay when things change, when leadership changes. We always have this framework which will keep our buildings connected. Let's see, no curriculum is going to be a perfect K through 12. There's not a curriculum out there that schools would say this is the best one. It works in every single grade. This resource is the same all the way through. They just don't exist. But when we teach to inquiry, that's what research says is the best way students learn. And the IB also has designated areas where they make sure that they're catching students before they fall in specific grades. Theron, back to you.
Sure. I just want to say this too, just to remind everyone, as part of the why, when you look at a really detailed look at the curriculum audit that we had with Joellen, one of the things that she said and could not emphasize enough is having a common thread that would string through all of the grades, having a philosophy, a learning philosophy, a belief philosophy, a statement that would run its course both through the literacy and math programs. And in addition to that, something that would tie together all the disparate resources that might be collected for curriculum. When we look at our curriculum audit in whole, you'll see that there are many stutter steps of curriculums that started, stopped, began again. And what that has created is a large amount of resources that may not be working in the same direction or rowing in the same direction as they were before. And I think what will happen when you have some sort of a common framework around IB like this, you will have from the idea of looking at the grade level progression charts and all of that will be a way for us to sync all of those things together. So we're excited about that possibility of having everybody finally on the same page, not only around the learner profile and the expectation for them, but our approaches to teaching and learning.
I think we can go to the next page.
And I'll go ahead and take this too. Just, I think one of the biggest concerns around IB is whether or not it's going to be inclusive to students that won't be able to access the curriculum. I'm actually going to turn that around, because one of the things that I think were the tenets and at the core of the IB for All philosophy is this idea that all students deserve excellent curriculum, and they all deserve to have a really high level of expectation put on them academically. I will tell you this, I have a lot of people that will ask me this question: what about those kids that don't go to college? In the Aspen School District, that's a very small percentage of students. We're talking around 8%. And I noticed that a lot of people will say, hey, we need to have something in place for kids that don't go to college. What are going to be our programs for kids that don't go to college? Whenever they tell me those sorts of things, they're obviously typically not speaking about their own kids. They want to have their kids go to college. So the expectation and the default setting of the district should be that kind of excellent preparation is going to be pushing our kids and to be successful in those areas. Even if a student is not planning on attending a four-year university, everybody's expected to be able to have the capability of going. So we're hoping that that will be a philosophical tenet of that. In addition to that, around inclusivity, we actually had our special ed coordinator, Adric Arndt, do the training so we can start getting the pieces put together and how we can incorporate this philosophy to our at-risk and challenged learners. And there's a couple of pieces there for you to follow to see how the inclusivity of that could occur. And never once would the implementation of this program be at the exclusion of anyone else. So we just want to make sure that that's very clear with the adoption of an IB curriculum. In addition to that, when you're looking at the PYP, MYP formats, I think you'll see that there'll be no student wouldn't benefit from those approaches. across the board. And I know that Sarah's had lots of success in the diploma program of getting students that were not traditionally going into the diploma program. We've now seen through the IB for All a huge growth in kids even approaching and some of those more advanced coursework at the diploma level. So we're very excited about how that can go together. In fact, I think internationally, IB has really sought to make itself an inclusive program and making sure that all kids can have this degree of learning. Go ahead and switch slides, Liza. Thank you. I want to, before we turn it over to costs, I apologize. I don't know what happened to my Wi-Fi right as I started speaking. It stopped. That might have been a criticism of what was to come. But I just wanted to give you guys a very quick overview of our next steps from our last meeting. We said that we'd have a chance to meet with the grade level teams at the schools. We have still not done that. We met with our principals and we're trying to get on the leadership agendas for both those schools. So we will be doing a PYP presentation at the elementary school, and that's forthcoming. And we'll be doing an MYP presentation at the middle school, and that is also forthcoming. So we still have a few things that we have to do that. And an implementation team has not been developed yet. So those are other pieces that we'd have to look at as we're moving into those next steps that we talked about last meeting. So Eileen, go ahead. A little bit about costs, and Dave, you're welcome to join us on this one as well.
So we actually have two tabs here. And the difference between the low tab and the high tab was there are trainings that are offered for $450 online trainings, but they are all, I want to make sure I use the right word, asynchronous. So you're not having that connection throughout the whole course. And I actually am in an IB training right now. I have like 3 devices out. So the one I'm in, it would be under the high. So mine costs closer to $800. So I wanted you to see that there, you know, could we get everyone training for very little or 450? Yes. But the reality might be the higher one. The other prices are the same regardless. So we went all the way to 28 and 29 because the other years would be repetitive of the 23, 24. So you see the annual school fee after we are done with our candidate process. And then every 5 years, the actual IB come out, not just virtually, they actually come out and visit the school. And they interview people and they interview teachers and they ask, how are you implementing ATL? How are you transitioning from grade to grade? What are you doing for assessment? What are you doing for inclusion? So questions like that, like where in the learner profile is your strength? And they ask students too, where in the learner profile do you think we need to work? So that would be a school visit. I think I'm done with the cost unless there's questions.
So another thing that we want to do is just provide some of the exemplar school districts that would be a match to what we were doing. And we're not going to go into each of these, but please at your leisure, go ahead and take a look at some of those links. If you have questions about those, let us know. And the final slide here, I think, is just examples of some of those projects that we talked about in our previous presentation. It'll give you concrete examples of what those exhibitions are going to look like and what the community projects are going to look like, what the personal projects are going to look like, which will eventually become the CAS project that they do in the diploma program in high school. So just know that all of those things will layer and become better and better as we go through. I mean, when you take a look at Jack's presentation at the beginning of this board meeting, just think about how all of us were impressed about this young man's acumen and going in and pursuing something like that. Ultimately, we hope to have that same sort of a project-based project for every student that goes to the school, and it could be any sort of frame of reference or art or music or business or any of those things. We'll be able to honor a lot of different trajectories in mastery and show that across the board with our kids. And I couldn't imagine what would come out of this in the Aspen community. So we're very excited about those opportunities too, but there's some concrete examples of that. So at this time, do you have any questions for myself or for Eileen?
I have a question, Theron.
Sure.
has this been an opportunity, or will it become an opportunity, in your opinion, to look at how we have adopted IB at the high school and make any changes that may be appropriate, such as, realizing that our kids have struggled in some courses in college, like chemistry and calculus, and raising the bar for those in those areas where we know our kids have struggled. Are we talking about at least having like a 1-year SL chemistry, some sort of, of the core courses that our kids have been missing out on?
So you're thinking, in addition to just the addition of the PYP and the MYP, a reexamination of the diploma program. Is that right, Susie? And just in taking a look at the areas that may not be as strong academically as we want. I think, through both the clearinghouse data and the graduate panel work and that sort of thing. Is that what you're alluding to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And 20 years of feedback from our alumni that they've literally all struggled in chemistry because, the level that we offered was way below AP and IB, and so they were at a huge disadvantage in college. And so many have, switched career courses because it was just too hard. And I just want to make sure that we take this opportunity.
Well, I think we'd be open to examining everything. And I think that, I know that Sarah's always interested in making the program there better. And we just have to look at what would be the opportunity to do that. The only problem that becomes is, just since it's such a small IB program, whatever you choose, you have to choose wisely, because it can be at the exclusion of something else. And so that's what we would have to do, just to see exactly and have the most optimum program moving forward, especially in those areas of sciences that you're talking about.
And Theron, if I can just add, I actually met with the science department on Friday and again today, and they are, considering different ideas right now. No decisions are being made, but we're talking, and we're seeing about the trajectory of science class courses in the high school. And I've already emailed the IB Armed schools asking what do other schools do, small schools, to get some more ideas. As far as the math, we have surveyed our kids that took math senior year. Actually, we sent it to every graduating class over the last 6 years. And since we have, implemented, I would say the last 5 years, our AP calculus class, in addition to the IBHL, our students in math have been pretty satisfied, according to our survey that we've given, where they're landing in college.
And what the feedback many of us have been getting is that now they are prepared, but it's taking an extra year compared to all their peers. And so they're missing out on other opportunities. And so I just want us to make sure that, compared to all the other IB schools that I know Theron has visited, that, the DAC IB committee years ago visited.
Well, I think, Susie, another thing that would be incredible is if we did have this alignment with the other 2 grade levels. I think that we would see an improvement just based on that. I just think that there could be a little bit of a disconnect academically between each of those transition years that are occurring, that could, from, the 4th to the 5th. And then if we pivot up to the high school, the 8th to the 9th, just making sure that each one of those systems are aligned, we could hit those levels of learning and shore those up very easily. I just think having that conversation as the systems would be very powerful in being able to fix and identify anything that we notice that could be troublesome or something that would worry us as to how the kids were going to perform later on. And so, yeah, and I know that there's a constant reflection that happens at the high school around the data pieces. I think Sarah alluded to that tonight. I think there's a constant reflection of looking at what's going on with IB. And then I do think, to your point, we are always going to have to evaluate what our focus is going to be as we go through. Just, I know that we wanted to see exactly around computer programming, for example, and some of those other things. How are we going to extend those focuses into the program that weren't traditionally there? And so I think as we move forward, we will start to examine all those things and see how they fit into the entire picture. But to your point, not a problem looking at other schools as exemplars and figuring out how they work. And I think Eileen alluded to that. Just always just know that we are a small system and it's tough to get all of them in there. But I do agree, we do need to have that evaluated.
I think Katie has.
Yes, I do. So first of all, could you guys put this presentation into board docs so we can click on all the links?
Oh,
thanks. You're killing me. I'm looking at it. I can't click. And then just a couple of questions came up from various emails around this that were floating to the board. Could you just speak to how this would change, if at all, sort of what our golden or crown jewel of the school district, the outdoor ed and ex ed, would going down this path in any way affect the commitment to that and how time is spent when those?
No, and I think what was interesting in the last board meeting, in my comments, and something we didn't get to because we ran a little long, was just that emphasis that this is not going to go after any of the sort of crown jewels of outdoor ed or ex ed. In fact, I mean, we've ran the ex ed program at the high school for 20 years with an IB program. It's very easily, that's taking a complete week off with a group of students that are going to be tested at the end of the year. So I think, when you're looking at that as an accountability framework, we'd more than be capable of handling that. In fact, if you look at some of the tenets of the philosophy around IB, I think they dovetail very nicely into, especially with environmentalism and all those different expectations we have around outdoor ed, would be able to work really well within that. And I think just some of the frameworks around cooperation and getting along, all those different pieces of the ex ed and ODE expectations could easily be dovetailed into this curriculum framework. And so we would not see an issue with that. In fact, we talked to Robert Kelty, who was our consultant and working with this. We asked about would he see an issue with that being an impact? None. So I do think that we'd still be able to be who we are as a school district and be able to move forward just and still have that connection of IB academically, in addition to being connected through ODE and ex ed.
And the other thing kind of correlated to this is the concept of, how do I put this? Some people may view that it's only a select group of juniors and seniors who pursue IB. And then when they hear IB, that's what they think about, right? So I understand from these presentations and from what you said before that it is a program that can be a framework for all students, not just the top 20% or so. But I would just encourage that as we go through this and start the communication process, that it's clear that it's not the same thing as just what we're doing in junior and senior year. That the program is accessible, because this is what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, it is accessible to all students of all ability levels, that it's a framework and a way of putting our curriculum to work, whichever curriculum we choose. So I just encourage that we make sure we communicate in a way that isn't confusing for people, because I'm worried it may be that there may be this view of, oh, we're going to be a totally stressed out, intense, East Coast, all that kind of stuff. So I don't believe that to be true of everything you said, but I would just encourage continual communication around what it truly means. And then the next thing, that when I was looking at all those costs and training, is it doable in the time frame that was kind of presented there? I mean, how many hours of training? Is it inclusive of what we're already doing in planning for training and it's just a replacement? Or, are we looking at a scenario where we need, massive substitute teachers for weeks on end in order to get, teachers through this stuff? Has that sort of aspect been considered as that time frame of cost was put up there?
Yeah, so we talked about most of the trainings are, I can see my face this time. Okay, and most of the trainings are actually on the weekends or, potentially a couple substitutes, but we would really need to find time in the school day for collaboration, for people to make their points of inquiry, their program of inquiry, so that they could plan and they could align, because there's a lot of work that the teachers want to make sure, because they're also, constructing this curriculum and making sure it fits grade to grade. So we would really need to designate, time every week for this communication, whether it's vertically or horizontally. That to me is the biggest time commitment. My training right now is 4 days. So it was Friday afternoon, 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday, hour and a half today, hour and a half tomorrow. So I didn't require a substitute for this one.
Right. And another thing that's just remarkable, I think, about the IB training, and for anybody that's had the chance to participate in it, it's extremely popular with staff when they have the opportunity to go and actually meet with those folks for training. And it's almost inevitably done, or invariably done rather, by the practitioners of the IB program. So you're not getting somebody that's just their full-time job going around and promoting IB. Almost every one of them have their roots firmly in a classroom. And so I think that's one of the things that lends that credibility to staffs when they have the chance to go to a training, is that it's absolutely all their peers in other schools that are doing exactly the same thing. So they have the opportunity to learn from one another. And just, back to it being a program from everybody, I just think when we look at the original charter of the school district, and I'm one of those guys that actually read that, inquiry-based education is at its heart in the Aspen District School District. Everybody has always wanted to have the ability of students to have that style and kind of that liberal arts framework of education since the 66 charter was created around the school. So I do think that getting to that kind of an academic pursuit is has always been the heart of this system. So I do think that it's compatible to who we are and where we're going. And I think we've shown that at the high school. And I think that we could see that as well in the district.
Great. Thank you. No, I'm super excited about this. I think, obviously there's lots of questions about costs and time frame and, transitions. And I mean, it goes on and on, but I would certainly love to see you guys continue to go down this path and explore it, and, continue to communicate or find ways to communicate to the community about what we're thinking about, where we're trying to go, and make sure that the questions are asked and all that stuff once you're ready for that.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to chime in. I'm so sorry because I'm not on this presentation, but I do want people that are listening to know that all of our juniors, every single one, is taking an IB English. And I think almost everyone is taking an IB math. So we are really looking at this as high quality curriculum and instruction. And I think that's the key point about IB, is that it is accessible for everybody. And it is those approaches to teaching and learning that are going to allow all students to access the curriculum. So we are trying to get away from that narrative about just a certain percent of the population can access it. The full diploma is very rigorous for sure, but taking your core subject areas plus something you're passionate about in IB is completely doable. So just to put that out.
And to be honest, is done by most of our kids. 80% plus are taking more than one IB course during their junior and senior years. So it's already there. It's just a matter of getting everybody to align with what we're doing. Any other questions?
I want to thank you, Theron and Eileen, for a great stage 2 presentation. There'll be more to come. And, one of the really, really exciting things that this evening should demonstrate is that, despite it feeling like all COVID all the time, there's actually a lot of work going into academics and supporting kids and trying to help them and meet them at least part way. And then also conversations are really, really starting to form and come together as we prepare for the day after COVID, which, there won't be a day, of course, but, eventually we're going to be out of it. Eventually we've gotten out of every other pandemic, and eventually life returns to something like normal. The challenge will be for us to figure out how to take the learnings from COVID and having to teach in this sort of dynamic environment and really take our strong takeaways and embed them in our practice moving forward. So that's some of the work that I'm really, really excited to be working on with so many really good educators here in Aspen. And it's very exciting. But definitely want to thank you guys for that great presentation. And next on our agenda, Madam President.
Well, there are these two attachments. Do you want to mention them, the BOCES and the gifted and talented attachments to 6.2?
Dr. Arndt, would you like to speak to the two attachments just very briefly, if you would?
Definitely. So every 5 years, each administrative unit, which is what Aspen is, are required to provide for gifted and talented an action plan about what we're going to be working on for the next 5 years. The state comes through and does some evaluations of us. Our evaluation is in 4 years from now, so they'll send a bunch of individuals into our system, consult with parents, consult with kids, talk to, us, kind of evaluate where we're at within the process, and then kind of give us a rating at the end of that. But in looking at our plan about what we had previously in Aspen and some of the holes working with our current gifted and talented staff, this is kind of our plan about where we would like to go within the next 5 years within our process. So it's basically just information for you guys. It's modeled based on what I've seen in other school districts that I've worked, as well as other gifted and talented programs, across the board. When they reviewed it, that other attachment there was them giving us some recommendations or ideas about how we could supplement what we're currently planning on doing to make it even better. So
I was happy to read the possible book study, translating all our forms into Spanish. I like the upgrades that you've made to the gifted, to develop a talent brochure. I thought those were welcome upgrades, written procedures around the identification criteria. So that's great. Thank you.
my pleasure.
Shall we then move on to our DAC update at 6.3? Anything else with the superintendent update? You're done, right, Dave?
I am done. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Krista, and I saw Jim earlier. Is it going to be Krista?
Thanks for having us here. Yeah, we were both going to come. So this is a good segue because basically at our last meeting, we talked about IB. And I think that after the last board meeting, Jonathan Nickel kind of tasked our committee with community support and community engagement around this topic in the community. So that was what our meeting focused on. So the statement we have, and again, the reason we're just meeting with you guys, sorry about that, is to just kind of keep the communication fostered. So this is not an official recommendation. This is just a report of what our last meeting was. So with that being said, our last DAC meeting, which was held virtually December 4th, included a discussion with school administrators on the proposal to adopt the IB program K-12 at ASD. Based on the findings of the audit that we previously recommended, we feel strongly that a framework as well as substantial work in our curriculum is necessary. While not providing curriculum at the lower levels, IB does offer this framework, and we had discussions with our membership about the pros and cons of the program. Some felt that since we have IB as the capstone of our high school, it makes sense to provide the same framework in lower grades. Others expressed concern that IB is a rigorous high school diploma and that putting it in lower grades may make school too rigorous for all students and cause us to have to get rid of the programming that has made Aspen special. There was concern discussed regarding the potential cost of adopting this framework as well. We feel that communication around this should continue community-wide. We hope at the DAC as well as through our school SACs, we can continue to have discussions about this and that such a framework could become part of our UIP.
Great. Any questions of Krista? Sounds good. Did Jim want to chime in, or is that your presentation? It's a good presentation.
Thank you. You're muted, Jim. If you're trying to talk, you're muted.
Sorry about that. No, I think that pretty much summed it up. I think the biggest thing is that we have questions like I think everyone else does. And we hope that the school will have an opportunity to reach out more to a larger group of the community to get, some real feedback on this and whether this is a big step. And that would be that's always been our biggest focus, is reaching out to the community and really communicating with all of them on how they want to move and whether they think this is a good move to move forward with. Theron and he answered many of the questions we had actually, which was good. You could tell he was already leading in those directions, and we appreciated that. So I thought it was a very good presentation, and it's got a lot of positives, and I think you all are heading in the right direction.
Great. Thank you so much, Jim and Krista. And if that's no further questions, we'll move on to 6.4.
Dwayne's got
Yeah, I got one, Susan.
Sorry.
If I may, just to kind of put it on the record, I really appreciate this work. And if for nothing else, just to remind everyone, and I know this came up in the presentation, but again, I want to underscore, we've struggled for years for the concept of good, strong alignment. And if we think about, as Katie was pointing out, that if we think about this as a framework, right? It's an attitude, it's a framework, it's a philosophy, as opposed to a diploma. It's not one single deliverable, but it's a state of mind and a context from which to deliver education. And we might be able to do better in some of the alignment issues that I think many of us collectively have struggled with. So I think that fact alone, or at least that promise, is something that kind of gets, I think, a lot of us excited about. And, to continue the conversation and the due diligence around this is an option.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? Any other comments from board members? Susan or Katie? We're good? Okay.
You're on mute, Susie.
Any board member updates other than what we've supposedly written in our update? Yes, Susan.
I did not write anything, and I apologize, but just really quickly, we did get an email suggesting that we provide board briefs after board meetings, and so I don't know, we can put that on as an agenda item to discuss how we might create those. I mean, it's basically sort of just a summary so that we can send that out to staff and of what happened at board meetings. And I think it's a great idea and helps us to communicate. So I just wanted to mention that. And I also just wanted to mention the AEF fundraiser was on Saturday, and a great success by all accounts. And they honored Aspen Family Connections and Catherine Sand, which was really nice. And I think we're able to raise funds in the middle of a pandemic virtually. That probably is enough to cover the district priority needs, which is pretty huge. And from what I heard, just a really feel good kind of affirmation of our students and our school district. So really happy about that news. Dwayne maybe.
Yeah. I'll underscore that. It was super great. Friday night was a lot of fun, and it was done so powerfully well and just so simple and heartfelt. So, and bravo, because the community stepped up. AEF's leadership continues to shock and awe in all the most positive ways. So it's just amazing. It was a lot of fun. Makes me feel good about being in the community. And then secondly, I just wanted to let the board members know that Dave and I have had some conversations with Gilbert Sanchez and Kari Lynn there at the Cunningham Group to continue on with some of the master facilities, if you will, almost a refresher and a review of some of the capital improvement projects, scopes that we had conducted as a kind of a task force across the last 18 months. That'll happen later this week. It clearly is a prelude to informing the broader board and really starting to have the conversations across the board and whatever structure and subcommittee framework that we want to move forward with in order to put some detail under Dave's and Theron's leadership. So there you go.
Great, thank you. Katie, anything? You're muted.
I unmuted myself first and then muted myself when I was going, anyway. So we were supposed to have an FAB meeting today, and unfortunately the topic was our audit, and unfortunately our auditors did not produce said audit. So Linda, I wanted to make sure she had an opportunity to just chime in on that, but we're going to be filing an extension, which we've done many times before. Not a big deal, but just so folks know, I think it's an important thing to know. And I don't know, Linda, if you have anything to add to that. I know you didn't have a presentation tonight, so I just wanted to make sure you had an opportunity to.
Yeah, just kind of voice my frustrations a little bit. It's a disappointment. I really did not want to have to do this again, and filing the paperwork to do an extension, but I believe our auditors are just a little understaffed, and they're not going to look at any of our audit stuff until after Christmas. So anyway, that's where it's at.
They will meet the deadline. They will meet the deadline.
Yeah,
but,
and just so everyone is aware too, I have been in conversations with Dan O'Connell, so he's in the know, and he's going to help and hold our hand and actually provide some assistance on, who we need to, identify or inform as we move forward. I don't want to commit to a time frame of when I think they'll be done, because I was under the impression that they would be done now. So just those things are kind of out of my control.
Yeah. So we'll continue to be on it, and the FAB will work through the all the questions and stuff before it gets presented to the board. And then one other thing, COVID testing. I know Dave mentioned it in his superintendent report, but we continue to test every week. We're working on a solution for next year, meaning in 3 weeks. So we'll see what happens, but there's lots of avenues that we're exploring as a team to figure out how we can continue that layer of risk mitigation. CARES Act money, which has been funding it to date, is expiring. So depending on what happens in Washington, we'll see what happens with us for testing. So we're continuing to work on that. And just another shout out to encourage everybody to get tested, including send your kids. It's free, it's hassle-free. It takes 20 seconds to swab and maybe another minute to check in. And it's really, really important to keep not just our school district, but our whole community safe. There are a lot of percentages of cases. Someone said something like 30% of cases of COVID cases are asymptomatic, and that's what we're trying to go after. The younger folks, can tend to be asymptomatic. We want to make sure that we catch them and keep them from spreading, and to keep everything open, not just the school. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Shall we move? Dwayne spoke. Yeah, everybody spoke. Shall we move on to 6.5 January agenda items? And I think Eliza and Dave are going to try to come up with some policies that we should start reviewing, 3 or 4 per meeting. Hopefully many of them will go in the consent agenda, but some may not, and we'll just kind of start tackling our policies.
Add one thing to the January agenda then?
Sure.
It may be February, I don't know. And I told Dave this already, but at some point, I think fairly early in the school year, we should start having some discussions around summer school. And, given that it's not been an effective school year for many kids, not for all, but for a lot of kids have had some challenges, from last spring into this year. And I'd like to see if we can try to figure out, I know it's being worked on, but I think we need some public communication around it as well, so that if we are going to offer something, people know that it's going to, when it's going to be or what it might look like, that type of thing. So let's try to talk about that, not in May, but more like January, February, if possible.
I see thumbs up from Dave. Anything else, Susan, Dwayne? Okay, so action items. We were going to have to vote on 7.3, but we're not going to because we're waiting to talk to Dick Bump and some other things about the reimbursement resolution. Yep. So the GP8E, Eliza did put down all the dates of the school board meetings for everybody. So as you see a conflict, we can either try to change them if enough people want to change a meeting, but anyway, we have all the dates of the board meetings now. Thank you, Eliza. And then the 7.2 is the mill levy override certification. Is that Linda?
Yes, it is. I just 2 minutes on the actual resolution on there. This is a brand new format this year. This came to me from CDE, and it looks strange and it's confusing, I think, but maybe that's just because the old format I was so familiar with. So maybe that's it. But there's a House bill out there that it wants to show, this House bill is wanting to show if all of school funding was done through property tax, what would the mills be? So that's why there's this credit back, this tax credit line on there. The actual mills that we are assessing are 4.412 for the School Finance Act. So it's a little different, but it gets us to the end result of assessing our mills on there. And then we also have a memo that I put together that I really like for the certification, because it takes and it ties us back into what we had put in the budget when we originally did this. So you can see some changes of how in all the moving parts, and you'll see this in the mid-year budget when we do that in the second meeting in January. So tying it all, coming full circle back together on that. So we will also I want Eliza to make sure that this gets sent over after your vote tonight to the county's office, because they need to have that no later than tomorrow for the assessment. So Eliza, if you have any questions, we can talk tomorrow or after this meeting to make sure that we get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
Sure. So Dwayne and Susie, I'll send this over to you after this meeting in online signature format. If you could just sign it, and we'll be all set, and I'll send it over to you, Linda.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just ask one question about this? Because out of ignorance here, how do these numbers get calculated? Who does that?
It gets calculated. It kind of takes a village so the assessment value comes all from the county. So they give that information to me in a formal letter. They give us a preliminary in August, and then they just finalized those numbers about a little over a week ago. They gave us the final numbers, and then that information gets forwarded on to CDE, and the mill levy part, the 4.412 mills, that's written in the School Finance Act. So that's the same year after year. And then I have to go back and make sure we're not collecting too much on the override piece as part of the School Finance Act. So there's some calculations in there. And then the bond redemption piece is just enough to meet our obligations on the bond. And the abatements equal the prior year's abatements that were given out, or refunds that were given out when people protested their bills. So it's a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different people involved in calculating this, but it does all work together.
So who double checks your math, just to be sure? That's really what I was asking.
Yeah, actually, so then when this is done, I'll send it off to the county, and then I also send it off to CDE.
Okay.
So it gets kind of double checked, one through the county and then also through CDE.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have the responsibility of checking the math, because I did not do that. So
Not need to check the math. It's all it's a kind of a pretty well-oiled format that gets notified to everybody. And also Dan O'Connell is involved in it too, a little bit from the CD, but he doesn't get it directly from me. He gets it from CDE. So.
Okay. Is that it, Linda? Great.
That is it. If there are no more questions, thank you.
Great. Dwayne, any question? Dwayne or Susan?
No, I was gonna volunteer to make a motion to approve the mill levy override certification as presented this evening by CFO Linda Warho.
second.
Okay, quick roll call. Katie Fresh,
Aye.
Susan Merle,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimet.
Aye.
Great. So
Linda, do we need to also do any action on the separate certification document? I think that's just background and showing us some of the sub detail for the components of the resolution, correct?
You mean on for this mill levy certification?
Well, we just approved the resolution. We just took action on the resolution. You have a separate certification document that has the green headered funding details.
Oh, no, we don't need to do anything on that.
Right,
That's
that's
just informational purposes.
Background, right, just background information. It's called a certification, but the reso is what we're taking action on, which we just did.
That's correct.
Thanks.
And the
Sorry.
reso will be what we need to send off to the county. We
Got it.
won't send my backup information.
Right.
When we do the mid-year budget, this is like one little step. So it should be familiar to you when we get to the mid-year budget.
Gotcha. Susie, I'll make a motion to approve the consent action items, which include 8.1 draft board meeting of November 16th, the personnel items of 8.2, and the donations of 8.3 as presented this evening.
Great. Anybody, any second?
I'll second.
Great. Eliza, want to call the roll?
Sure. Katie Fresh,
Aye.
Susan Merle,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimet.
Aye.
Thank you. So moved.
Special thanks to Juliet Shield Taylor for gifts and donations to our gifts for our teachers. Super stuff. Well done.
I agree. Totally.
Thumbs up.
All right. So future agenda items. Anybody have anything in addition to what the bullet points listed there, or want to remove any of those bullet points? The BSR policies, I think Jonathan is working on that. Is that right with you, Dave?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And any removals or additions? We can move on. And the debriefer for today is Dwayne.
Okay, I'll be relatively and short and succinct here. As a business meeting, I think you think about the concepts of being, crisp and on target. I think we did a good job this evening, just staying on task, topic, discussion, action, or direction. We stayed with that fairly well. We had a super large and I think a super important package of detailed presentations within the superintendent's report. We probably need to be a bit more accurate with our estimates of time for that particular update. I think everyone would agree that what we heard this evening through the superintendents and the principals channels, all those updates, the IB update, all that was super important. So we probably need to allow more than 15 minutes on that. So that would be the only kind of constructive critique that I provide on the time flow. And then I believe the discussion between board members and various members of the public, as well as administration, leadership, kind of really getting that flow. And then, we had a great example this evening, obviously from a student. That one's I'm going to remember for a long time in terms of just how talented the communication is. That was in and of itself was a great demonstration of some of the progress of the school district and the great families that participate. So Susie, good work. Appreciate you kind of keeping us on track and on pace. That's the whole point of a good, effective business meeting. So bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. Any motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Real quick, Katie Fresh,
Aye.
Susan Roll,
Aye.
Dwayne Romero,
Aye.
and Susie Zimmett.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays,
Thanks, everybody.
Stay
Happy
safe, stay
holidays.
healthy.
All right.
We'll watch for communication from Dave and from Linda.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool
Thanks.
things. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.